It's a people, it's a community, it's a life, it's a heart, it's a
Ask me a
spirit.
question. The heck would you want a picture of a tattoo of $1,000 on your penis for?
What makes this book so relevant, even though it was written over 100 years ago, is that it's about terrorism.
The work, sex, cars, bars, broads.
And with
anything.
children, it's building on what they have. They have great imagination.
Dementia is not a diagnosis, it's a set of symptoms.
And he kept explaining to me that I wasn't gay. You cannot be gay. You just
So
cannot.
the main thing is to be open and honest and be, true to yourself.
Good evening and welcome to Talking About here on QPTV. I'm J.R. Whalen. Thanks for joining us here on Channel 34. Our topic tonight is one that does not get enough talk, both publicly and privately. We're talking about the sexual challenges facing couples. And our guest tonight is Dr. Cynthia Pizzulli, who is a sex therapist who practices in Suffolk County, and she joins us here tonight on QPTV. Thanks for joining us here on Talking About.
No, the pleasure is mine.
Now, the topic has been around for a long time, and there's been more cable TV outlets, more outlets to talk about this, but the challenges facing couples in the world has been around, I'm sure, for years and years and years. Why, in your opinion, is it that people don't want to come forward and maybe try to come to you and have it solved?
Well, although it is a lot more accepted to get help for sexual issues and to discuss sexual issues nowadays. I mean, now you have Sex in the City, you have magazines that are more geared towards talking about sexual issues for men and for women. More men than ever are seeking out help. They're seeking out psychotherapy to work on emotional problems, including sexual issues. So it is more accepted to discuss this topic, but it still is taboo. How do we talk about it? How do we talk about sex without saying things that people are uncomfortable hearing? How do we talk about orgasms? How do we talk about arousal? How do we talk about what happens in the bedroom, which is considered private and between two people and not to be discussed? And it depends on your age. Nowadays, younger people are comfortable talking about sex, and people from older generations are still having a lot of difficulty talking about the issue. I'm hoping that's going to change as we go forward.
You mentioned a show like Sex in the City, which presents in all different forms sexual issues facing men and women. It seems that a show like that presents challenges facing women and men. They kind of overcome it, they kind of don't, and they just sort of move on. Do you find that it has misled society in a certain way about you need to solve the problems as you go along to get yourself ready for a healthy relationship going forward?
I think in some ways it may initially create an illusion of what relationships are like. Not everyone, can go shopping at Prada, and go home to their, $3,000 a month apartment and have, mad passionate sex with a different partner every night who looks like, GQ model. I mean, I think that's a little unrealistic. Nice idea, but unrealistic. But at the same time, I think a lot of the intimacy issues on that program are very realistic. And the issues around feeling comfortable with your sexuality are mainstream.
Okay. A viewer's joining us right now. Mike is on the phone with a question for Dr. Pizzulli. Good evening, Mike.
Are you there, Mike?
Mike, we can't hear you. Go ahead, Mike. Okay. While we try to get Mike rigged up, let's see if we can. Let's talk about. We talk about the challenges facing couples and areas like that. It's brought on by conflict. There is some conflict that comes between a man and a woman and a woman, a man and a man. It doesn't have to be a straight couple. It's brought out because of any number of things in a relationship.
Absolutely. Sexual problems in any relationship have multiple causes. We look at, in the world of sex therapy, we try to define the problem. What is this? Is this an arousal problem, meaning that a person's not able to become aroused even though they have a large amount of desire for their partner? Okay, and it could be a desire problem where a desire is lost in a relationship. And it is true that after you've been together for a very long time, they say that the magic, goes away and you need to rekindle that kind of desire. Sometimes it's also an orgasm problem where a person isn't able to achieve a climax or be able to get the extreme fulfillment they're looking for from their sexual encounters with their partner.
And if that's the case, a lot of times people may just think that they've hit a wall and it's the end of the world and, well, this can't be fixed.
Exactly.
And that's when someone like you comes into play, and I would imagine that with some work, with some time, this can be addressed.
Absolutely. We need to be optimistic about this. I wouldn't do this kind of work if I didn't see people have fulfilling sexual intimacy with their partners. It's very important to be able to have fulfilling sex. It's a human need. It's not optional. I think a lot of people figure, oh, well, I can live without that. That's just something that, you know, if I have it, that's great, but if I don't, all right, you know, I should be able to learn to deal with it. But I think realistically, people want that fulfillment. They want to have good sex, you know. They want to be able to do that in their love relationships, in their lives, in order to feel whole.
And when they do find that, or when they find it again, thanks to help from you or colleagues of yours, right, you've got to really appreciate their outlook on life going forward.
Absolutely. It's amazing to see how people's lives change once they first acknowledge the fact that they're entitled. It's an entitlement. You know, it's not an optional thing. Once they acknowledge that they're entitled to this kind of pleasure, they're entitled to feel desirable and to desire another and to be able to act on that in their sexual way, which is individual to each person. Mm-hmm. You know, the ways in which they feel aroused or pleasure, and it's great. It's a great feeling.
So besides a lack of desire, or perhaps being with the same person for a long amount of time, you could be together, I guess, perhaps for a year, mm-hmm, but there must be a lot of factors that can come into play. It could be very intense work life, or maybe some family struggles going on outside that particular one-on-one relationship.
Yeah, I mean, life is very complex. You know, no one ever said it was going to be easy. I think that the time that people are working nowadays and taking care of their families, their children, really does interfere with having a healthy sex life. And I think that's, you know, I think Newsweek had an article recently about how, you know, couples are, you know, not having a good sex life because they're torn in 16 different directions, taking care of their parents, taking care of their kids, trying to, you know, work on their career. And there's no remedy in the bedroom for that, you know, time problem. It's not just about time, though. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people use sex as a way to control each other, as a way to manipulate, as a way to solve other problems in a relationship, in a marriage, let's say. So it's very complicated and involved.
The Newsweek article brought up the relations between gay and between gay couples, and when somebody might envision a scenario in a sex therapist's office, the first thing they might think about is a man and a woman. Mm-hmm. But this applies to gay couples, lesbian couples. I would imagine that you and others are serving couples all across the spectrum.
Absolutely.
And it's all the same energy.
It's the
that's
same
either
energy.
Missing or that needs to be readdressed.
It is. It's the same type of problems. You know, it's still, everyone wants to feel desired and to be able to be desired by someone you feel the same desire for. You know, that mutuality helps a healthy relationship grow. It helps a person feel safe. And when that's problematic, sexual problems arouse. Okay, so it could be in any relationship that this may come about. And I think it's very important for your viewers to remember that this is not just the case in just straight relationships. Oh, well, gay people, you know, they just have a perfect sex life. They just know what they want, they go for it, and that's not necessarily the case. You know, it's a similar issue.
So the same issues of desire, wanting to be desired, wanting to have the other person be a recipient of your attention, of your desire, runs across the whole rainbow.
Yeah, I think it's human nature. Mm-hmm. It's a human need. I find that people aren't fulfilled with their lives when they aren't feeling desired, and they're not fulfilled if they don't feel the same for another. You know, it's a problem, and a lot of people come in for therapy. Maybe they're not coming in for a sexual problem, but they also come in because they're having intimacy problems or relationship problems that lead to sexual problems. It's one thing, and you need to define what your needs are. If your needs are, I just want to be able to have good sex, you know, I don't need intimacy, I don't need, you know, a relationship, I don't need something that's, you know, for life. That's fine too, but I think that being able to define what it is you need is very, very important. It's crucial.
We're here on talking to Dr. Cynthia Pizzulli. Our phone lines are open, 718-460-9802. Don't be bashful to call. Dr. Pizzulli is here, and she can answer your questions, and we'll answer them as best that we can. We were talking before the show, and we were saying that these issues that are facing couples, it's not just young married couples with all the energy in the world. It's not just, it also includes older couples, people in their 50s and 60s and beyond, who still have a desire, still want all the elements of desire that we just discussed. And it's not out of the realm of possibilities to see a couple in their 60s coming into your office and say, we're trying to find that magic.
Absolutely, and I want to say I don't consider 60s old by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I think that standard of what we consider old has definitely changed. You know, of course, I'd like to believe that because I'm getting older, but you know, at the same time, I think that everyone wants to have a fulfilling sexual life. A lot of people come into couples counseling because they're having a fall off of the frequency of sex. They are not feeling the desire as much as they had before. Maybe one partner wants to have sexual intimacy more than the other. But the problem is still relatively similar. I mean, of course, as you get older, you know, your body doesn't move as well. Sometimes you have health problems that limit the ability of having fulfilling sex, and that can be really, really difficult and frustrating. And we do address those issues, you know, on a couple-by-couple basis. But I think that, you know, it's similar problems. And if people are living longer, they're staying monogamous longer, in a lot of cases, and they're trying to find ways to make sex more exciting. You know, well, we've been there, done that. How do we keep our sex life fulfilling? And it's a problem.
And plus, in the media now, there are more and more examples of elder people, I guess 50s and above, 60s and above, being portrayed in sexually enlivened situations, which you might not have seen 15 or 20 years ago. So I guess that also might encourage people to say, well, you know what, maybe maybe I'm not so crazy being 70 years old and, you know, want to be intimate again with my wife.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I mean, I think recently there was all hubbub about Kathy Bates and about Schmidt and how she took off all her clothes and got in the tub with, you know, Jack Nicholson's character, and, you know, everyone's going, oh my God, you know, she's so sexual, she wants to have sex, and she's so much older, you know, but you know, we need to see more of that. Sex is part of our culture, not because it's sensationalized, but because it's a human need, and it helps people feel good about their lives.
We have another caller on the line. Jeff is calling us this evening. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
How you doing?
Very good.
Yeah, I have a question. How do you become a sex therapist?
Need you to speak up a little bit. Okay, we missed Jeff's question. We're going to get the question communicated to us from the control room.
Okay.
Don't be bashful to speak up with us, you know, 718-460. Okay.
Question.
718-460-9802. A great question brought up by Jeff. How does one become a sex therapist?
That's a really good question.
Do you have to be a complete master of desire, of, you know, do you have to be at the top of your sexual game to be a sex therapist to want to help people?
Yeah, I think that's everyone's fantasy is, you know, because I'm a sex therapist, I've got everything down pat when it comes to sex. I must have the best sex. I must be the best sexual partner, you know, and that's how I became a sex therapist. You're completely incorrect. Well, you may be correct about some of it, but that's not how I became a sex therapist. The bottom line is this. You need a lot of education. You know, this is a very difficult field to work in for a lot of reasons, because not a lot of people are comfortable talking about sex. And you really need to be able to talk about it in a clinical way and know the person you're speaking to and be able to make them feel comfortable, and also have the experience, education, training,
Does it
certification.
require basic psychology, philosophy courses if somebody wants to get started from the ground floor? Is that a good way to start?
There are a lot of ways to go about it. I'm an ASECT certified sex therapist. That means an organization called the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists has put me through a rigorous training program and felt that I met the criteria to perform this role. I started out, I have a doctorate in clinical social work and a master's in clinical social work, master's degree, and a master's degree was required even to get into the certification program. You would need to be certified in your state in either psychology, social work, or marriage and family counseling in order to even be considered for the program. So it does require a great deal of years of education.
Is it getting too personal if I ask what sparked your interest in going into
Not
this
at
field?
all. I love sex. I think sex is a great thing. I believe that everyone should be able to have a fulfilling sex life. I'm a very optimistic therapist. I've been doing this work for 10 years, and I notice that even though people come in with another presenting problem, let's say they're coming in with depression, or they're feeling lonely, or they're having anxiety, or some kind of trauma, that things end up being about sex, eventually, somehow, some way. You know, sex does suffer when other things are not going well in one's life. So I felt, you know, this is just an area that's very interesting to me, and also I just wanted to affect a positive change in this area.
And this really also speaks to the whole philosophy that love and beauty comes from within. I'm sure it doesn't have a lot to do with the physicality of a person. I mean, you want to make sure that everything is working properly.
Yes.
Right, but at the same time, you have to have that energy inside of you. That glow has to come from inside of you. You have to love yourself in order to be able to, I guess, to find the right person.
Yeah, I think it's especially for women, more so than men. You know, this is a men are from Mars, women are from Venus type of thing. Women need to feel like they are attractive and desirable in order to feel arousal and desire. If they don't feel attractive in some way, either because of body image issues or because they just think they just generally suck and nobody's ever going to want them, you know, that can interfere with their ability to have sexual intimacy. They tend to turn it off to cope. Men, not so much, but definitely, you know, it's an issue if a person doesn't feel desirable. If you're not, but we find that men are a little bit more adaptable in that area. That they can still become aroused and have intimacy.
Okay.
But in general, the reasons that people are sexually attracted to each other aren't necessarily about, you know, being, you know, everyone looking like a model or people having perfect bodies or you know, I think that it's just something else that we don't understand. It's a chemistry or more of a energy that we don't have scientific research to back up. You know, we don't really know what causes it.
Well, we do have another phone call.
We do.
Dan is calling us tonight. Hello, Dan.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm enjoying the show, and I had a question. I was wondering, Dr. Cynthia made a statement earlier that about sex being a necessary part of life. How does that apply to, say, the priesthood and ministry and just celibacy in general?
That's an excellent question. If I said necessary, I will correct that. I would say that it's a natural part of life, that the need for sexual intimacy is a natural human motion, okay, and feeling state. People do very well with oftentimes ignoring those needs, denying the need for it, for either a higher purpose, if they feel they have a reason, if it's for the church or for a religious reason. Sometimes people, since they're uncomfortable with sex, either because of trauma or some other type of life event, may be able to avoid feeling those feelings to cope with the need. Okay, so did that answer your question at all?
For the most part, yes. Just changing in the terminology kind of shifted the question in a different direction, but I have a clearer understanding now. Thank you.
Great. You're very welcome.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Dan. Don't forget
Thank
you
you.
can call us at 718-460-9802. We're here on Talking About with Dr. Cynthia Pizzulli, a sex therapist who's based in Suffolk County. We're talking about sexual challenges facing couples or individuals for that matter. I mean, we just talked about the fact that an individual has to really feel good about themselves and feel good about their sexual capabilities to find the right person. Nobody's perfect, and people need help at various levels, that's where someone like you comes into play. Based on your research and based on the people that you've seen coming into your office, have the types of needs and the types of issues needing addressing, has it changed over the past, let's say, 50 years? Not that you've been in practice for 10 years.
You're right.
But based on research that you've done, has it been the same small list of items that couples have a problem with?
Yeah, and most of it's, I haven't actually gone out and done any of my own empirical research in this area, but the research that I've read and explored, you know, we're constantly evolving in this field to try to understand human sexuality. So I will say that as a disclaimer. But for the most part, you know, experts have been identifying the same types of problems, you know, that there's problems of arousal, desire, and orgasm, problems with sexual intimacy, difficulties with, you know, couples are very complicated. You know, sometimes it's a matter of, you know, learning things early enough in life that you need to know in order to survive. You know, if you don't early on learn about sexual drive and sexual response, that's what we call it. If somebody isn't used to having a sexual response to another person, it's going to be very difficult for them to have sexual intimacy that's comfortable, okay? If they learned shame and guilt early on about feeling sexual response or any type of sexual feeling, that's going to negatively impact their ability to have good sex. If a person thinks that they're good in bed because someone told them they were good and got the wrong information and is still doing the same stuff wrong, that's going to interfere their ability to have good sex. So it depends on the individual. I think the best thing about doing sex therapy is that I get to meet a lot of different people and I learn from them every day. Each case is individual. It's not a blueprint. And I need to be perfectly aware of listening to a person's narrative of their experience before I determine what the problem is and try to intervene to fix it.
We have another phone call. 718-460-9802 is our phone number here on Talking About on QPTV. Nancy is on the air with us. Good evening, Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
Good evening. I had a question to ask the therapist. It's in reference to arousal and the skin and different parts of the skin that arouse you. Could you expand on that a little bit? Or how much skin does human body really have, you know? Like I know there are, they have like pressure points on the skin. You also have parts of the skin that are very sensitive. And, you know, when you're with a partner, there are parts of the skin that gets very aroused.
Absolutely. And first I want to say that different parts of the human body have different levels of arousal. But that's going to be individual to each person. What might feel exceptionally arousing to one person may not feel as arousing to another person. For instance, let's say one woman might love to feel someone's breath on their neck or a touch to the neck area, which would be very, very arousing, and another woman may not feel comfortable with that. That may not be as arousing. I don't know the research that has, you know, identified all the different areas of arousal in a human body. I think it's a matter of individual taste and experimentation, learning what feels good to you, and then obviously knowing what feels good to you and conveying that to your partner, saying, I need to be touched here, this feels really good, oh, that feels really good, I need this type of pressure there, I need this lighter pressure here. Those kinds of things are individual, and it's very important that you express your needs to your partner, whatever they may be. Is there a specific question that you had about particular areas of the body, of the man's body or the woman's body?
Well, just the human body, you know, because we have a lot of skin on there. We have we have you know, a lot of points on the body that, you know, like you say, you know, it depends on the individual, you know, what feels good or, you know, what gives them pleasure. How much skin does a human body contain? How much of this skin do we have?
Actually, I'm going to have to defer that question to a medical doctor, and I'm assuming that a medical doctor would have gotten that question on a test in medical school, but I'm not a medical doctor, so I won't be able to answer that question. It's very intriguing to me, though.
It's the largest human organ is, in fact, the skin. If that answers your question. How many feet and miles of skin, I have no idea either. That's for another show. But it's a great question brought up by Nancy, because it does bring into play communication between partner A and partner B, just like communication between...
Or partner C and partner D and partner E, too, because good sex isn't necessarily only between two people.
Right.
I just wanted to bring that up.
But also it's the communication between a partnership and a sex therapist. It's all about the communication. So if you feel if you feel that you feel aroused when somebody caresses your stomach, tell that to your partner. And we talked about the fact that in a healthy relationship, masturbation is a very healthy part of any healthy relationship. Whether you're in a very, very healthy, loving, full relationship or not, that's a great way to find out what arouses you and what doesn't.
Absolutely. A lot of couples come in, and one of the most common presenting problems is that they feel threatened or rejected if they find out a partner has been masturbating. Oh, they shouldn't need that. If I'm meeting their needs, why do they need to pleasure themselves? And the truth is, masturbation is very healthy for lots of reasons. One is because then you can learn which parts of the body and which areas of the skin to touch that feel arousing. Because the only way to know what feels the best is to try it out and then express this to your partner. But also, it's a stress relief. It's a very private moment with oneself. It doesn't necessarily involve another partner. I mean, you can have mutual masturbation between two partners, but I'm talking about solo masturbation is a way of reconnecting with the self. And it's a very healthy outlet for all ages, and it doesn't matter whether you're in a monogamous relationship or not. And I tell people that all the time, and I explore why that feels threatening to people, because it really usually has nothing to do with sex. It probably has more to do with insecurity in the relationship itself.
Okay, we have another caller on the line here on QPTV, 718-460-9802. Deborah is with us right now. Good evening, Deborah.
Hi, good evening. My question is, the only time that I have an orgasm is when me and my husband, we use like a vibrator. Is there something wrong with me that I'm not receiving an orgasm other than when we just use that?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
That is actually a very common question. It's extremely difficult for women to achieve orgasms. A lot of people don't know that. You know, if you watch standard pornography, you would think that women are having multiple, 13 orgasms at a time, and it doesn't matter how they're touched as long as there's intercourse. That's completely unrealistic. In order for a woman to achieve an orgasm, and we say a very large percentage of women need to have clitoral stimulation. Okay, there needs to be a stimulation of the clitoral area. They need to have the right pressure, the right touch, and it needs to be sustained for a long period of time to achieve an orgasm. A lot of times with intercourse, that's not achieved. And that's a lot of the times why women feel really inadequate, because they say, well, how come I'm not able to achieve an orgasm while I'm having intercourse? I feel terrible. I don't want to disappoint my partner. How come we need to use, either oral sex or a vibrator in order to achieve an orgasm? And it's actually perfectly normal. And if you're identifying that, then at least you're having mutual satisfying sex with your partner. And I think that's wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Deborah. So the message here is that it doesn't matter how you get to the orgasm, as long as your partner knows how you can get to that level, and get to that level of excitement. There's no textbook that says you must do A, B, C, and D. If your partner can get you there, go to it.
Absolutely. And also I do want to remind your listeners and viewers that it's good to know what gets you there first. I mean, because it's nice to wait around for a partner to do it, but that can take a long time, to try to train somebody to teach them exactly what feels good for you. I mean, if you are extremely attuned to your partner, you can get there faster, but expressing your needs and desires is the key to a healthy relationship in general anyway, not just in the sexual area. So I think it's really good for you to know yourself what it is that will get you to achieve an orgasm. Not everyone's able to achieve an orgasm every time they have sexual intimacy, and that's okay too.
When you talk about orgasm and multiple orgasms, typically in the media, textbooks, or whatever, you're talking about a woman. Are the same issues faced by men?
This is also a very controversial topic. I've talked to men who say they can achieve what they're calling multiple orgasms, meaning that they start with arousal, sustained arousal, achieve an orgasm, are able to ejaculate, have a drop off, and then are able to be aroused again, come up again, be aroused, and have another orgasm. It's not as fast, typically, as women's multiple orgasms tend to be, which are, women actually, their arousal pattern is a little bit different than men. They achieve an arousal, they can achieve an orgasm before they've reached the peak of arousal, and that's oftentimes how they achieve multiple orgasms. I feel like I should have like little charts like Ross Perot, but I don't have them with me. So it's a different type of anatomy, and so women and men achieve that pleasure differently. They get there differently.
Are there any areas of media that you think are doing a good job about teaching people, not necessarily the spiritual aspect of this, but the fact that there has to be a certain amount of it has to be an energy from within. A show like Sex and the City, which might lead you to believe that women are having orgasms through intercourse because of what you're seeing right there. It would be very not typical for them to address clitoral stimulation, as you just mentioned.
Right.
But are there media today that you think are doing a good job?
I think that even programs like that are at least helping. I mean, you know, it would help if, you know, if Carrie's having sex, that she explains that she needs to be in a certain position during intercourse in order to achieve an orgasm. You know, that would be better than just watching it all occur and, you know, calling it a day. But I think the fact that people are talking about it on television is helpful. I think that there are a lot of really good books out there. And, you know, you just search on orgasm books, search on, you know, anything that talks about sexual intimacy, and there's a lot of good writing out there. Unfortunately, helping people with this is really difficult because they need to practice it and experience it themselves in order to know what feels good, and it's hard to teach someone this kind of thing. I think that what's most important is that the media is starting to make it acceptable to discuss it, and I think across the board everyone's doing a good job with that. So.
I think we have another caller. Maxine is joining us tonight. Good evening, Maxine.
Hi, Maxine.
We can't hear you out in the studio, Maxine. Let's see if we can get that. Okay, we lost Maxine.
Oh, no.
Hopefully we'll get Maxine back. Maxine, if you're out there and other folks, give us a call, 718-460-9812. Just redial in if you're out there. We're here on talking to Dr. Cynthia Pizzulli, a sex therapist and couples counselor who is based in Suffolk County. We're talking about sexual challenges facing individuals and couples of all races, creeds, and colors, because it's not just a straight married couple that has issues facing them. It's all along the rainbow and the spectrum. You name it, and people are looking for hitting the jackpot as far as desire goes. We were talking before the show on another topic, and we were saying how men and women lose sexual interest for a whole various number of reasons. And with women, it's one thing to feel romantic. It's another thing to feel aroused. And they're two very different things, and they play to two different areas of the body.
Absolutely. I like to say that the sexiest muscle in the human body is the brain. Okay? The ability to free your mind and fantasize and be with the moment with your partner is hard to come by in a very stressful lifestyle. And women more than men need to be very clear, be very focused. The way that women are socialized sexually is different than the way men are socialized. So the ways in which women feel desire and arousal are different than for men. For men, a lot of times they can become aroused initially by seeing any type of sexual image, let's say. Seeing a breast, okay? Seeing an erect penis. Those things cause arousal immediately for men. For women, having a mood set a certain way, being talked to a certain way, being approached a certain way, feeling good about their bodies in a certain way, those things can be a catalyst to arousal. And oftentimes they need more of that in order to be aroused. And that's why you'll see a lot of trouble in couples, because after a while there's not much time and inclination to make those things happen. And women get very frustrated because they feel bad about asking for those needs to be met, or they can't really define it themselves. They can't figure out what's going to feel erotic.
Just to have some candles lit, a nice romantic dinner, something like
Absolutely.
that. And the man might say, but here I am in bed, let's go.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
And that's not necessarily what a woman is looking for. And I would imagine it's reverse as well. I'm sure there are plenty of men out there that also need to have a sensual stimulation before a sexual stimulation can take over.
Absolutely, and you said sensual, and that's a very important word. You know, sensual is different than erotic or sexual, and some people need that connection first before they can achieve the arousal. But I do want to say this, it's not exactly erotic just to have candles out or just to imagine, you know, the waves touching the shore of the beach. That's romantic and sensual, but it's not erotic, and it doesn't necessarily bring a woman to an orgasm. I mean, you know, you need to be able to know what is going to get you aroused, and that has to be usually something, a pretty erotic stimulus. And a lot of times women aren't taught what that stimulus is. How do I achieve that level of arousal? How do I know what I need to be thinking, what my frame of mind needs to be, what I need to be telling my partner? And that's a lot of the time what we work on in couples counseling, trying to help women identify that, help men identify that, so they can communicate it and get their needs met.
When you have couples in your office, or individuals not married, do you ever, besides what we talked about, is there anything along the lines of foods they should eat, or foods that, you know, I guess...
Oysters, you mean?
Oysters,
or,
avocado, or whatever. But is there any kind of, is there any food that people can eat that you might advise them?
Well, you know, if I get turned on by the thought of eating oysters, then that works for me. You know, I think that what happens is we get conditioned to believe that certain types of foods are erotic, and we use them in our lives in a sexual way, and that makes them sexual. Okay, if a person, you know, used to fantasize about having whipped cream put all over their bodies, then every time they see whipped cream, they may be aroused. You know, that's cool. That's great. You know, it works for you.
And that's all about trying to figure out what it is that arouses you. It's all about communicating with your partner. We have a caller. Mary is joining us on the line right now on a Thursday night, 718-460-9802 here on QPTV. Good evening, Mary.
Hey now.
Mary, we can't hear you.
Mary, we lost you.
Let's see if we can get Mary's question communicated to the floor. Oh, we lost Mary. There's something about Mary. Mary, call us back. All right, 718-460-9802. Maxine, if you're out there also, give us a call as well, because we missed you before. 718-460-9802. So talking about the food, there is no textbook prescribed food. It's all about, like you said, if you like candy bars with almonds, then that's what you should have.
Right.
Tell your partner that, you know, I want to go out and have dessert, and let's go someplace where we can have an ice cream sundae with almonds.
Absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of, again, I'm not a medical doctor, so I just want to say that as a disclaimer, but there has been a lot of research looking at the ways in which certain foods affect hormone levels and serotonin levels in the brain and dopamine levels, and though we do find a link between mood and those chemicals. Okay, so for instance, chocolate. You know, we talk about how when a woman is experiencing that premenstrual type of decrease in estrogen, that eating chocolate does help them feel more level with their mood. Well, there's something to that, okay? Or certain foods do increase certain chemicals in the brain that let's say, antidepressant medications increase, like serotonin. Those, you may have heard those medications called serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They help increase the production of serotonin in the brain. And there are foods that we have found that will increase those levels, not so substantially that you wouldn't necessarily need an antidepressant if you needed one. But so there are links, and there is a lot of good research out there looking at it. But I don't know if that's going to solve your sexual problem if you just eat chocolate, let's say.
You might need a treadmill to go with it to increase your
well, you can increase
your sexual prowess.
Yeah, well, or the prowess, right? Your stamina.
We have another caller. Let's hopefully the caller has told our producer what the question is in case we lose him. But Richard is joining us now on the phone lines. Good evening, Richard. Oh boy. Hello, Richard. We can't hear you.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, we have a big problem. Hopefully, John, our producer, will talk to the callers. We lost Richard.
Okay.
Somebody there on the phone line?
This is Richard.
Hi, Richard. Go ahead.
How you doing?
We're doing very well. How about yourself?
Okay. The problem is, I've been married to the same woman for like 22 years. We got 5 kids, and I think she's been fooling me all the time. I don't think she really had an orgasm. Could you tell me how I could do it?
Okay, so you're not convinced that your partner has had orgasms. You think she's faking?
I think she's faking.
Okay. What makes you think so?
Because after we're through, I'm like into it, and she's like just real cold.
Okay. So did you ask her?
Sometime, but you know, at that time, she just yeses you to death.
Right.
Do you feel as if your wife has never had an orgasm?
Excuse me?
Do you feel as if your wife has never had an orgasm?
I think she did, but I don't know when.
Actually, I'd like to respond, okay? This is what I'm thinking. This is the first thing that came to my mind. I'm going, communication issues, right? Because you're not even sure what she's thinking or feeling. That right now you're feeling very vulnerable because you're not sure what's going on for your wife. You're trying to guess.
Right.
So what I would, while I do see there's a sexual issue, definitely, the first thing that I would want to find out about is what's going on in the relationship. What's happening between the two of you that you're so uncertain about what her feeling state is in the bedroom. And after 20 some odd years, you know, that can kind of fall by the wayside. So I
Probably
think
because we work together. We're together all the time.
yeah, that's definitely, I hear that a lot. Couples that work together, it's interesting. They bring work home. You know, they can't talk about.
Well, yeah, that's what she says. I'm the boss at the house and in the business. And it's her father's business. You know, they brought me in.
Mm-hmm.
And when he retired, I came in, and I mean, I think it's communication. But how do I communicate to her? What do I say? What do I do? I don't want to do the wrong thing.
I would imagine at this point, I wouldn't think that you could do the wrong thing. I think at this point, if you would say to her, listen, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I really do want us to be able to communicate better. I want to be able to know what you're feeling more. I want us to be more attuned. I want to be connected with you, and I'm just feeling totally disconnected. Lately, I have not been able to tell what it is you're feeling and thinking, and you know, I think we need to work on that. And then you could consider couples counseling, because it's very rewarding. A lot of people say, oh, I'm not going to go to couples counseling. I'm going to wait till it's like, you know, worst case scenario, and I'm like next to divorce to go and see a couples counselor. That's the worst time to go.
I can't even get her to sit here and watch us talk now.
Well, is she uncomfortable talking about sex?
She is real, you know, real old-fashioned about sex.
Okay.
If she knew I was going to call. She knew I was going.
So she's going, oh my God.
Now Richard, the issue here is not the frequency that you're having sex. Is that right? Richard, you still there?
Richard?
Done because I want it.
She does. She has sex with you because you request it, because you initiate it.
Right.
Okay, and she doesn't initiate sex with
Not
you.
At all.
Okay.
Not at all.
This is a common problem, Richard. It really is. A lot of times. I'm sorry?
You'd rather spend more time with the kids than with me.
How old are the kids? No, we lost them there. How old are the kids, Richard?
18, and the youngest is 8.
Oh, wow. So you have your hands full.
Yeah.
There are a lot of, these are very typical problems in marriages today. You know, and what happens to women is when they become mothers, a lot of times they see their role as different. They're not able to perceive themselves as sexual, okay, as sexual beings, as desirable. And they oftentimes get used to the role of mother and don't explore that other role. And if you are feeling like you're not getting your needs met, but you also really desperately want her to get her needs met, I think that it would be really good for you to talk to her about seeking professional help. I know it's very hard to convince partners to go and get that help. That's a very big issue. And if you're not able to convince her to go with you, maybe you could consider seeing somebody on your own to help you deal with it and maybe intervene and think of some things that you could say to her that may be helpful to make her feel safe. Because it's okay to be old-fashioned. That's not a problem, as long as both of you are getting your needs met.
Okay, thank you. I'll try it.
All right, Richard,
Okay,
thank you very much.
Bye-bye, Richard. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
calling.
I'm really glad that he called because it plays into the whole communication thing. And it's a win-win situation if he goes to his wife and says, you know what, let me find out, is there something missing? I want to help you. It's not that you're doing something wrong. It's not that his wife is making him unhappy. He may be facing a challenge to try to find a way to get her to have, to actually have an orgasm. But I can't see any problem, any danger in opening up the gates of communication.
No, I think that only good can come of that. You know, at least you find out where you stand. You know, I think that's important. A lot of times people are trying to avoid dealing with conflict in a relationship because more conflict can ensue, and then what do I do when, you know, what if we have a fight? What if, you know, we open up a can of worms? But I think denial, you know, never underestimate the power of denial. I really do think it's important to address issues when they come up in any type of relationship.
Let's talk about people in your profession. I think that when people hear about sex therapist, they think about the textbook icon Dr. Ruth from the 1980s. Was this a common profession in the 80s and earlier, or has it really become a much larger part of the medical profession because of the need it's addressing? Has that happened since the 1980s?
It has come a long way. I would say that you will find more sex therapists in the Yellow Pages than you did before. You know, Masters and Johnson started all the sex talk and sex counseling type of things, you know, early on, 60s, 70s. Dr. Ruth is the sex therapist icon. You know, everyone gets all weirded out when they come into my office and they expect to see this really old lady with glasses. And they go, yeah, it's pretty scary for them. And then they calm down and realize that we're just peers and we're going to be talking about sex. So, but it has changed. But also with the advent of Viagra and all of this stuff with the medical community addressing erectile dysfunction in a different way, it has definitely come a long way.
Okay, we have another caller. Okay. Peter is joining us here on the line, 718-460-9802. We're talking about sexual challenges facing couples here on QPTV. Peter's on the line. Good evening, Peter.
Hello.
Hi, Hi Peter.
I'm a 50-year-old guy with a substantially younger girlfriend, 38 years old, and having the best sex of my life.
Good for you.
Thank you. Listening to the program, something came to mind. You were talking about women and how they like to be aroused and foreplay and the like. And I was thinking about from the male perspective. I know it's very difficult being a male because you need to have an erection to have sex. It seems like it's easier to be a female in that way. You don't have to be aroused initially. And as a male, I find that there's very little. I mean, I can have fantastic sex for weeks or you know, weeks at a time or months at a time, and you know, just fantastic sex. And then if I have one experience that's not so good, or like let's say I'm feeling very tired for the evening, it's like I have very little patience with myself.
I think what you're saying is you're talking about manhood issues that run pretty deep. There's a lot more pressure on men, okay, to be able to become aroused at, okay,
at 2
on a dime.
In the morning, at 2 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
when a lot of women want to have sex.
Right, and that if you aren't able to perform on cue, that there's something wrong. And that's completely ridiculous because just like for women, there are times when you're going to be in the mood and there are times when you might not.
But if a woman doesn't have an orgasm, it's not a big deal. If a man can't...
Oh, you think so now?
Oh, well, I feel bad about it if the woman I'm with doesn't have one, but you know, it's not unheard of. Where a man doesn't get an erection, you know, it's like, it's much more, it seems I don't know, it's different.
I think there's more society pressure for men to be able to ejaculate, to have an orgasm when they're supposed to. I mean, you have this, is it premature ejaculation or is it delayed? So ejaculation, it takes me too long to come, I come too fast. You know, it's also supposed to be just on cue, exactly when it's supposed to occur. And society does put a great deal of pressure on men, and it's something that needs to be addressed because I think that men are starting to be emasculated and they're not really getting the help that they need to feel good about themselves unless they perform the way the media says they should perform.
Right, and I think pornography plays a role, because I know myself, I've watched pornography on and off for many years, and if you watch pornography, I think you develop an unrealistic expectation of your body. Because,
Absolutely.
Probably because they can edit out all of the failures.
Right, and there's a fluff person off stage who's, you know,
Right.
helping this person become aroused, because quite frankly, they're so desensitized by this point that they really can't maintain an erection during the entire shoot.
Right,
and then they splice in all these loops to this tape,
Right.
you know, to make it look
Anyway,
like they're having sex for, 6 hours.
Right.
It's a horrible thing for men to have to meet up to this expectation.
Now, Peter, let me ask you a question. You mentioned you're having the best sex of your life. You're 50, your girlfriend is 38. Is that the result of constant and ongoing communication?
I think it's yes. I think for the first time, I'm learning what it's like to be in a relationship after having been married and divorced, and having had a lot of short-term relationships during the 60s and 70s, and you know, I think that, but also I think that part of it's a function of just being turned on to the person I'm with. You know, just she's my physical type, I guess, and you know, she's also very, you know, she's assertive sexually, and I think that it's, you know, it's for those various reasons.
Right, if she's initiating, you feel desired, which is good.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you're always the one who's, you know, saying, "Oh, please, please, you know,
Right.
can we have sex?" And that makes people, that helps people with their self-esteem.
And she's very understanding. If more understanding than I am of myself, if I occasionally have difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
She's understanding, and that you know, that doesn't lead me to and enter one of these like cascades, like what's the matter with me? What's the matter? It's interesting. I had a brief experience, erectile dysfunction. I went to the doctor. I got some Viagra, and you know, one night when we were supposed to get together, I was very concerned. I took the Viagra before I met her, right before I met her, and then but within 10 minutes we were making love, and I didn't get the Viagra. So I don't know whether it had anything to do with me knowing that I had the Viagra behind me, but anyway, I haven't taken one since.
Yeah, it's the little placebo effect, we call it. So let me ask you a question. So the doctor gave you Viagra after having one experience when you weren't able to...
I think I exaggerated. I told him I'd had a few, and maybe one or two experiences, and exaggerated and told him I had a few more than that.
Yeah, there's a lot of misnomers about Viagra. Actually, a lot of people think, well, you know, Viagra will just solve all of their arousal problems. But if there's no desire, Viagra isn't really going to do a whole hell of a lot, you know. A lot of times people are in relationships where they really don't feel desirous of their partners anymore, and then they go and get Viagra because they think it's going to solve the problem, and it doesn't. So, and also doctors are very quick to prescribe it, you know, to try to fix the problem. And us psychotherapists, we like to drag it out and really analyze the whole thing, you know. So, but
anyway,
I'm really glad you're having good sex.
Yeah, these are just some thoughts I've had, and so anyway, it seems like a good program. Is it on every week? Is this program on every week, or?
That's a good question. As the host, I guess I should know that, but I'm not sure. Now, Cynthia will not be here every week. We hope to have Cynthia back. We're on, I think that we're on Sundays at 6. Okay, Sundays at 6 o'clock here on Channel 34.
Well, I'll watch you regardless of whether the subject is sex or not.
Fantastic. Well, Peter, we're so glad that you called in, and good luck to you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
That's a great that's a great example right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can talk all we want, and you hear about people saying, you know, you've got to have the desire, you've got to love yourself, and you can hear that until you're blue in the face. But to hear someone like that say, you know what, I really felt the energy from within, and I have somebody with me who really understands the communication. Well, there's no better example, no better textbook than hearing a live person.
Absolutely. There are a lot of people having a lot of good sex.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't really hear about them because they're not publicizing it.
Right.
You know, all you hear about is problems, and that's our society. You know, we hear about the problems, and we don't really focus on the good things. And you know, as a therapist, of course, people are coming to me with problems, but I get to see them through to a resolution a lot of the times, and so I have a better frame of reference. You know, and I don't think it's not necessary to struggle or to suffer with a sexual problem. It can be dealt with. And people can have a healthy sex life.
Okay. Again, give us a call, 718-460-9802. Couple minutes left here in the show with Dr. Cynthia Pizzulli, a sex therapist who's based in Suffolk County, answering your questions about sexual challenges facing individuals, facing couples, old and young, married or single. And give us a call because we'd love to talk to you. We've had a couple of great calls right now, and we want to get more on the line. We've really, based on the callers, we have had a lot of questions answered about a path to a happy sex life. There's no one prescribed path. And the fact that the gentleman who called in has 5 kids, been married for 22 years. Just the fact that he's having what appears to be regular sex with his wife is a pretty good accomplishment given the fact that he has 5 kids running around the house between the ages of 8 and 18.
It's a great accomplishment if he's having good sex. You know, I'm definitely going to, you know, jump in here and say just because one partner's having good sex doesn't mean the other partner's having good sex. And I can't say whether or not, you know, his partner is, which category his partner is in, but I think it's important to be, you know, questioning that as, you know, our callers are, and you want your partner to be satisfied. That's a really good thing. That's important.
And telling your partner that, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not implying that you're doing a bad job in bed. It's not implying that you're making me feel bad. I want to help you achieve a higher level than where you're at. We're good, and let's make it better.
Absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with always trying to strive for something better. You know, that's important. A lot of people try to rekindle the sex life by adding new ideas, you know, doing more role playing, adding toys into their sexual relationship. Some people even do swinging. They, you know, have sex with other partners. You know, anything is fine as long as 2 people consent to it. And 2 people are mutually comfortable with that and are communicating their needs. That's the key. You know, you can't just assume that your partner's happy. You need to ask, you know, does this make you happy? And I think that's very important as well.
Okay. A lot of great issues we've addressed tonight. Dr. Cynthia Pizzulli, thanks so much for joining us here on Talking About, here on QPTV, here on Channel 34. Thanks to all of our callers and all of our viewers watching us tonight. I'm J.R. Whalen. Thanks for joining us here, and we'll see you again next time here on Talking About. Thanks for watching. Very quick.